Okay, so we're going to be talking about the second part of voting and elections, and in this part, we're going to be talking about why people don't vote, or what are some of the factors of why people do not vote. Okay, so for this one, the learning objectives for this section, this is kind of a short section, but we're going to be talking about some of the reasons why people do not come out to vote. I mean, some of them are called institutional features that it's hard to change because this is what it is at this particular point in time. How do you get past that? Okay, we're going to be talking about income, education, that type of thing. We're going to be talking about the ballot structure, and more so in this particular one, we're going to be talking about political culture, or why uh, why different parts of the country view the right to vote or the ability to vote or the opportunity to vote in different ways. Okay, so the first part that we're going to be talking about are the factors in voting. And so what this one is saying is that there's people that tend not to come out to vote for certain reasons. And so people that have low income levels, like people that are in poverty or those low socioeconomic status groups, the SCS groups, have low educational levels, high school GED, that level, or in areas that are high minority levels, are less likely to come out and vote. When you look at the state of Texas, we have low income levels. I think the per capita, the average per capita, the last time I checked, was somewhere around maybe $28,000, which is almost below poverty. It's working poor, let's put it that way. Low educational levels here in Texas. Uh, you can say that Texas, and especially Corpus Christi, I mean, something not to be proud about in Corpus Christi, but we have the highest high school dropout rate for Latino students in the state. So high school dropout rates, high minority levels. So these factors are prevalent in the state of Texas. So that's kind of one of the reasons that we're having issues here. Okay, other issues are just the length of the ballot. I don't know if you've ever voted before, but sometimes the ballot tends to be kind of long, especially when it comes to the year that the general election where you're voting in the president. So it will have the candidates from the popular ballot, which basically means who's running president, vice president, the U.S. senators, your congressmen, the Texas senators, the Texas House reps, the governor, the attorney general, the land commissioners, all of these that we call the plural executive that I'll be talking about later. But this is long, long list of people that are going to be voting that we have to vote in. And sometimes even the cities are also there, as are the school boards. Okay, we might have referendums from the city. And these would be like the one that I was talking about just a little while ago in the last lecture about the bonds for the street, fixing up the streets. Okay, those might be some of the referendums or propositions that are coming through. It might be some of the petition drives that are coming through. There might be constitutional amendments, although lately we've been having those as separate elections, but basically I'll talk more about this when we talk about the legislature. But I talked about it when I talked about the U.S. Constitution. That says when we change the Constitution, we have to vote in the amendments, especially if it has something to do with money. And so these will be on the ballot. It might be on the ballot in November. It might be a separate election. The legislature meets every other year, and so they need to get it going. They can't get it approved or get the program going unless it's approved by the people. So they've been holding special elections for that. As I said, city, county, school board, bonds, special districts, those are all on the ballot as well. So it's just like a long ballot. So the best advice I can give to students is that we encourage you to go vote, but before you go vote, you should really look at the ballot because otherwise it's going to take people a very, very long time to vote. I remember that there was a situation, this was 2008, this is when Obama was elected, and that was one of those years that you saw that there was a spike in the voter turnout. Well, people didn't even look at the ballot, but that was a long ballot. It was a long ballot. It took forever to go vote because people had not even looked at it, so they were trying to figure out what was going on. It was just taking a long time to go vote, and that were standing in line, and I was one of them, we were getting a little bit upset, let's put it that way, because it was taking so long for people to vote. Okay, I want to talk about political culture. And political culture is defined as the political values and beliefs dominant in society. The political values and beliefs dominant in society. In other words, what do you believe and why do you believe this? And basically, the way that the book breaks it up, it says there's three subcultures when it comes to political culture, and it depends on like where in the country you grew up and how that particular area of the country or that region of the country kind of like established itself and what was going on, why people feel the way they do about this thing called the right to vote. So the three subcultures are moralistic, traditional, and individualistic. Okay, for the moralistic culture, this is talking about New England, the Protestant during the era. So New England, which is like the 13 original colonies. And so when you think about the 13 original colonies, we were trying to become the United States. And so, part of their revolution was the taxation without representation. So they took politics, the political process, the electoral process, really to heart. I mean, they said this is like important. This is really important stuff to us. We think we really need to, think about how we do this. And so they're saying in politics, there's a morally right and wrong way to do things. And so the laws that are going to be passed should really benefit the public in total, in the aggregate, should benefit the general public, not just one person. And so this is already telling you that they probably tend to see politics and what politicians do and the laws that should be passed as being more liberal, more liberal. And so they look at the right to vote as a right and an opportunity for people to have these discussions, to deliberate, to decide what would be the best way for the country to go based on this morally right and wrong way that politics should happen. Okay, so in contrast to that is the traditionalist culture, and this is based on the plantation society of the Deep South. So if you think about the Deep South, you probably don't know much about it. I mean, or maybe you are from the Deep South, I don't know. But what comes to mind when they call it a plantation society, you're talking about slavery, right? Slavery. And so we all know that the slaves did not, or the blacks in the United States were only considered what, three-fifths of a person for a very long time. There had to be a constitutional amendment to say yes, they are a full person, they have full voting rights. I mean, it took a long time to get that. So in this plantation society, the politics was seen more as the sphere of the social and economic elite. And so they were saying they think that whatever's going on in the country or whatever problems that you might be having, that's your problem. Don't make it the government's problem. So they believe in personal rather than public solutions. So this should be telling you right here that it's more conservative in the way that they view politics. And so in this traditionalist culture, they also view political participation as a privilege because this was part of the Deep South. It was part of that plantation society that blacks had to earn the right to vote, and took lots of legislation to get to that point. Okay, now we come to the individualistic culture, and this is Middle Atlantic, south and west of the Ohio River. And so basically, this is kind of like the rough and tumble type of society. It kind of blurs the distinction between economic life and political life. And they're saying we don't really see that there's much of a conflict of interest in all of this because people that have a lot of money are the ones that tend to run for office. You can't really get elected into office unless you have the backing of business. So there's not a whole lot of distinction between the two. So businesses play a strong role, and especially here in Texas, if you don't have the support of business, if a politician does not have the support of the business community, they're not going to get elected. You need to have the support of the business community because you need their campaign contributions for sure, no doubt about that, right? But you also need for them to back you up and to get people to go ahead and support you to be able and for you to win office. Okay, so where is Texas? Well, Texas is kind of a mix of the traditionalists in East Texas, the Piney Woods that we talked about, which is kind of like closer to Louisiana, closer to that deep South that we were talking about. But the rest of the state is more individualistic, where that political economic distinction doesn't really exist too much. But people in Texas do not participate in politics because they don't really regard it very highly. They don't think that it's part of their life, that it's really the domain of the business interests, that they really don't have much to say about it, that they have low levels of political efficacy. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, so yeah, small role to play in Texas politics for sure. So low voter turnout in Texas because people do not value this act of political participation, and just a really small role to play in politics. Not much political efficacy.